o'clock. We'll call this regularly stated meeting of this USD230 School Board to order. First order of business is roll call. Candy, please collect roll.
All members are present here at Hilltop. I'll go through and just say that you're here. Mr. Boyle.
Here.
Mrs. Sealing. Here. Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Winbolt.
Here, but I am not at Hilltop.
I'm sorry, we are not. We're at the district center. I tried to go there. Mr. Updike.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell. Here. Mr. Anderson.
Present. Very good. Please rise and wait, let's approve the agenda first. Approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second for approval of the agenda. Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Approved.
All right, now please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, very good. Thank you. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thanks to each and every board member for being here and present. Our first regularly stated meeting in the new District Administrative Center. It looks fantastic. Kudos to hundreds of people that had involvement in the creation of this from concept to move in. It's a great accomplishment. We appreciate everyone's hard work because it took a lot of very, very hard, diligent work. Moving on to recognitions, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, we'll start with Mark Williams, Spring Hill High School.
Good evening. So this one's a little different because this is an email that the school administrator never really wants to see from Keisha. And this is an email about every official's report of unusual situations from an activity or a game. But I thought it was worth sharing with you. Now, what took place did not involve Spring Hill. We were part of the game, but it did not involve our patrons. But I wanted to share this with you. The real story was an outstanding high school soccer game with hospitable, reliable game administration, and 2 coaching staffs of high character and integrity who model sportsmanship. Spring Hill Game Administration does an outstanding job hosting officials. There is hardly better hospitality anywhere else I have traveled at both the high school and collegiate levels. They were also proactive and responsive with poorly behaved spectators. Both coaching staffs are, from top to bottom, individuals of high integrity who are invested in their players as athletes, but more importantly as people. Additionally, they are easy to work with as the officiating crew. There was, quote, no coach versus official last night. We didn't always see eye to eye, but we disagreed respectfully and provided the best environment possible for these student athletes to compete. If all high school soccer programs in Kansas were modeled after these 2 groups, we might have less of an official shortage. So I share with this you not only to give kudos to Mr. Howard, Mr. Shea, and our coaches and our athletes, but this is the Spring Hill way. And you talk about small town values, and we are getting recognized, and all of our kids that participate on activities or in the arts for Spring Hill model and coaches model that behavior that you guys expect. So I'm just glad an outside person recognized that and reported it to Keisha. And I just want to give kudos to our students and our coaches. Thank you.
Wolf Creek Elementary School, Beth Cooper.
Good evening. That was kind of a nice tribute, Mr. Williams, and that'll be a hard act to follow. But last week at Wolf Creek, we celebrated and recognized our paraprofessionals on National Paraprofessional Week. And I don't think I have anything to share that you don't already know about our paraprofessional staff, but I just want to kind of extend that week a little bit further into tonight by just recognizing them for all that they do for all the students and staff at Wolf Creek. They push into classrooms and teach. They pull small groups out and teach. We even have a couple of paraprofessionals who teach whole classrooms at a time and teach computer specials. We have our COVID cares paraprofessional who is going around cleaning and supporting with lunch and helping with all the extra duties. I just can't say enough about this staff. They have been positive and cheerful and resilient, and done an amazing job throughout this, kind of extra challenging year. So I just wanted to, as I mentioned before, just extend their celebration one day longer and recognize them tonight in front of our board. Thank you.
Timber Sage Elementary School, Darcy Sly.
Hi there. Well, thank you, Beth, for that, and Mark. I think that I've gotten to enjoy these recognitions probably as much as the board. It's always nice to hear great things that's going on. Tonight, I'd like to recognize our school psychologist, Keenan Odom. He has done just an amazing job this year, helping the teachers to grow professionally, along with working with our students, every time that we need his support and his guidance. He's there. He's willing to come over. He shares our building with Prairie Creek, and so he's willing to take that time, even when he's not at Timber Sage. He's willing to get on the phone and talk us through any situation, and he's just been such a great support, and I really appreciate him. The other people that I'd like to recognize is our front office staff members, Jackie Rufer and Danielle Ecker. They have just been phenomenal these last couple of weeks, working through so many things. Danielle's taken on the enrollment for both Timber Sage and Dayton Creek, and so she's wearing two hats at once and trying to help keep everything in line. And then Jackie has just been working hard at getting all of the interviews set up for me and helping with that and making sure everybody's got their reminders that yes, we have our Zoom call, and she's been great as well. And with subs coming and going, they always know where they're supposed to be, and if someone's not there, they're quick to find somebody to fill a spot. So I just want to reach out and say thank you to them because they've done a great job. Thank you.
Prairie Creek Elementary School, Jody Cole.
Good evening. Tonight, I would like to recognize and thank our district SRO officers, Deputy Peshnik and Deputy Ramos, for their dedication in keeping our students and schools safe. This year, they have continued to visit our buildings, make connections with our students and their families, build positive relationships, and make home visits when needed. This hasn't been an easy task this year, but they have worked through it. Deputy Ramos worries about some of our remote learners and the lack of opportunities for them to socialize. So he makes lots of home visits as often as possible. We are all grateful for their service. Thank you.
Spring Hill Elementary School, Tammy Endicott.
I have two people that I want to recognize, and I just wanted to share another positive feel-good story about the Spring Hill School District. But first, I wanted to recognize Shelley Huber, our librarian, and her library aide, Tiffany Zare. So when COVID hit last year, they had I just noticed Jody's dog. They had a virtual book fair, and then they had another one this fall. And in those two virtual book fairs, they raised less than $1,000 for the two combined. So they really wanted to get books in students' hands. And so they really processed and tried to figure something out. And they did a good job, because in our recent book fair, following all mitigation, no parents were in the building, like we didn't have our family night, but they allowed the students to come down and view the books without touching them. And then the students went home and told their parents what books they wanted. The parents put money into the e-wallet. Once there was money in the e-wallet, Shelley and Tiffany went down and got students like two at a time and brought them down, and they touched, as Tiffany and Shelley touched the books, they pulled them, got them to the students, in the students' hands and at home to the students. And they raised over $7,300 at this book fair because they thought outside the box and did something different. And I just love my staff for that. I think just all of us at Spring Hill, I feel like, are really good at thinking outside the box and problem solving and figuring things out. And I really think those two women did a wonderful job. The feel good story is, I don't know if you guys know, but I moved to Pomona, Kansas this last year. And believe it or not, on our country road, there's 3 different families that have moved from Spring Hill to this area. I don't know why on this road, it's kind of weird, but all 3 of them, and especially have praised Spring Hill and enjoyed their kids going to Spring Hill. And one of them, who my daughter is intellectually disabled, And one of the neighbors was in Miss Larson's class, previously also intellectually disabled, and really talked about how she's never got bullied at Spring Hill. She loves Spring Hill. She wished she could have stayed at Spring Hill, and couldn't talk enough about Spring Hill when she found out that I worked in Spring Hill. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's great for people to hear. Some of our families move away and they really miss our Spring Hill community and how well we treat each other and just support each other. So just wanted to share that.
Woodland Spring Middle School, Rodney Sprague.
So I'm going to piggyback a little bit on Mr. Williams and talk about the Spring Hill Way. We just held our first track meet, first official track meet as a school, and I couldn't have been any more proud of our coaches and our kids. And I heard it over and over again about how the officials running the track meet kept going on and on and on about how our kids were always where they needed to be. They were listening, they were respectful, and how awesome they were. And they weren't just talking about Woodland Spring, they were talking about Spring Hill Middle School kids who were also at the track meet. Of the teams that were there, those two teams really represented their districts incredibly well. So we're really proud of them. Also, we have a celebration. We have records set in every event for track at Woodland Spring in this last track meet. Okay, I did get some chuckles. That's really good. It's our first one, so we'll see how those records stand after the next few track meets, but we were really proud of our kids. They worked really hard. I also want to recognize our building leadership team really quick. I've got a group of 10 individuals that are in the middle of working on our building strategic plan, and the time that they're giving, the hours they're giving, and the work that they're giving, and the excitement that they're approaching it with. I have never had an experience working with strategic planning where people were excited and they thank me every time for the opportunity to do this work. That's a tribute to our staff and the professionalism of our staff. And so I'm just really proud of them and the work that they do. So with that, thank you.
Spring Hill Middle School, Trevor Gertzen.
Yes, I tried to go to that track meet. I think I drove around for 20 minutes with no luck to find a parking space. So there was a lot of people out in Mr. Sprague. So we host ours tomorrow, but we'll see how the parking is for that. I want to take a minute and recognize last Thursday night, Spring Hill Middle School hosted a mental health event specifically for middle school age students and families. And we had some staff members that helped out with that. And so Becky Riffle, our counselor, Larkin Fales, were both there and very, very instrumental in helping it work out, as well as a student, Aubrey Fuchs, who helped run the sound booth. And so she got a whole tutorial on how to run a sound booth. But even along with that is we streamed it live on YouTube, and that's something we've never done before. We've done it with athletics, but we've never done that with an actual program. And so a huge compliment to Phil Elliott and Ethan and their team. They made a streamless system for us. And just like so many other things with the pandemic, we've realized that there's more we can do and more ways we can connect with families. One of the things I heard from many families was, thank you so much for providing a streaming option, because they were able to watch that outside of being able to physically come to the building and be a part of it. And so very grateful for the support and the staff that we have to help Spring Hill Middle School continue to provide resources for parents and kids in a variety of ways.
JC Dalton, Director of Nutrition Services.
I wanted to say thank you to the nutrition services staff for what they've done since COVID hit us. They have been going straight, they'll turn left, they'll turn right. They've done everything we've asked them to do to get our kids fed. And KSDE sent an appreciation award to all schools in Kansas. And so I wanted to read that for our staff. And it's a certificate of appreciation awarded to Spring Hill in recognition of heroic efforts since March 2020, ensuring that Kansas kids receive healthy and safe meals during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Kansas State Department of Education appreciates and applauds your leadership, tireless dedication, perseverance, and commitment to help keep Kansas kids healthy and ready to learn. So we have an amazing and extraordinary staff, and I can't say thank you enough to them for the great job they've done. Take care of our kids. Thank you.
Cindy Jados, Special Services.
Good evening. Just as Mrs. Cooper recognized our paraprofessionals, I wanted to do that as well. Tremendous group of people that we have in our district who work most directly with our students. They are right there on the front lines helping our students every day. So we wanted to continue to express our appreciation for them. Another group I wanted to recognize was our OTs, or our occupational therapists. Very cooperative group, incredible group of working together. They've been phenomenal this year of really stepping up, doing what's needed for students, finding ways to really incorporate how do you work with kiddos in this type of environment. So really great group. Today I was talking to someone, they said, there's no big egos in that group. They're all wanting to help each other and help each other to do the best and to be the best they can be, which is a really neat thing for us to have here in our district. Finally, I also wanted to recognize special services office staff. I'd been out a little bit with some health things. This group, Jenny Herndon, April Neal, Jennifer Kuhn, and Nicole McLaughlin, our secretary, stepped up tremendously, did so many things to help out. I just can't recognize them enough for the hard work that they do. So thank you.
Did any of the directors have any recognition? I did want to recognize Lisa Stiles. We lost her today, and Lisa worked for the school district for 22 years and phenomenal lady. Those of you who, anytime you ever walked into the high school library, Lisa had this infectious laugh and really made you feel good about herself, about yourself, and phenomenal person dedicated to us, and wanted to make sure that we recognized her today. Our heart goes out to the Stiles family, the Meeks, and so many other people that are missing Lisa today, and hopefully we can love on them a little bit. The other one I wanted to recognize, Katie Clare lost her father, and it's been a long, hard road, and wanted to recognize Katie for all her hard work, and even going through all this is stayed dedicated and actually tried to come in many days when we told her to stay home with her family. So both of those families are experiencing losses today, and we wanted to take a minute to recognize those people. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Moving on to business with individuals.
We have no cards.
Okay. The consent agenda, which consists of approval of the consent agenda, approval of the minutes from the regularly stated meeting of March 8th, approval of the minutes of the special meeting of March 31st, the clerk's report, treasurer's report, payroll and claims, personnel, paper towel order, which includes a year, one year, right? 1 year of paper towels, and a yearly copy paper order. So.
Yeah, one of the things just to throw out, we're very fortunate to have the Educational Support Center. And with that, we're going to be able to start buying in bulk. And we have a large paper towel order, and we also have a large order of paper. And it does two things. Number one is it frees up a lot of space in buildings. If you've ever been in elementary school, especially early in the year, they have paper in every cubbyhole and every place. So we're very, very excited to be able to do this. However, when you buy in bulk, it's going to cost more than $20,000. So we wanted to let you know that we will be buying in bulk. We would like to put it in the consent agenda, but we are also wanting to point out that both of those are in there.
Any questions or comments on the consent agenda?
I just had a quick question. Do you expect that those two things will be kind of the same time of year every year on a yearly basis?
It depends. Paper towels, maybe, may not. It just depends on usage. This is a high usage year. Next year, we may not use that. Copy paper, I know that at least one board member wants us to move towards more paperless, and we're doing a lot of things to do that, to move towards paperless. But I can tell you, people still like a piece of paper in their hands. Mm-hmm. So the goal is to be able to buy in bulk early, but a lot just depends on usage. The other thing is when you add more buildings and add more students, it may be kind of a hit and miss until we kind of get used to doing that. There's some other products that we'll be eventually buying in bulk as well. Like I said, being able to have that big space over there is really, really nice.
I just wanted to mention the personnel agenda in the agenda and say thank you to Michelle Hackney and how long that list is and all the interviews they must have been doing and all the hard work that has been put into getting a new elementary school ready and really building our staff. And I have complete faith and trust in that. And I just wanted to say thank you.
I want to echo that. I think our last little quick meeting and I left, it was 9 o'clock. You were still here. So.
But it's the full the interview team as well, interviewing, making recommendations.
Thanks.
Any questions, comments, further questions or comments on the consent agenda?
Mr. President, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved in second for approval of the consent agenda. Any final questions or discussion? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to action items. 7.01 Apple equipment. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, we're going to turn this over to Phil Elliott. But while he's coming up here, one thing I want to say is many, many years ago, this district dedicated itself to being one of the top districts in the state with technology. And we were very, very fortunate to have Phil and his people that are running that for us. We're going to spend a lot of money here, but one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is how many phone calls that Phil and his people get from other districts asking about so many things that we're able to do here that even districts that are larger and maybe have bigger budgets are not able to do. So I did want to take a minute to point out that there is a lot of technology on here, but I can tell you statewide, a lot of people recognize Spring Hill has really good technology. So Phil.
Thank you very much. I'll be happy to dig in as deep or as shallow as you want to go on these, since I do have quite a few. But first thing I want to do is mention last meeting, I kind of gave you a bulleted list of things that we'd be talking about. And the only items on here are the ones that I'm a little bit nervous about lead times on. On this particular one, I did put the lead times down that I received from the vendor. Apple products, we have to buy directly from Apple. That's the way the educational agreement works. So there is no other vendor available for us to purchase those. So according to my sales rep, the MacBooks are tolerable. We could potentially wait till the next meeting for those. The iPads are right at the edge for me because I would like to swap out the teacher iPads before they leave because I need to get the ones that they have to the recycler or the guy that buys them back, because the sooner we get them to him, the more value they have, because he can get them processed and back out before the beginning of the next school year for those that buy refurbs. So that's the reason they're on tonight. A couple of the items besides the MacBooks and iPads, Apple TVs for Dayton Creek. And then we have a caching server that sits on our network. And the first computer, whether it's an iPad or MacBook that goes and gets an app update that Apple sends out, and those of you that have any Apple products realize that's a lot of updates they send out. It caches that so that then all the rest of them we have only go to our server instead of going back across the internet to download those. So it's a conservation piece for our internet circuit. And then I did try to include on each of these items which budget codes they were coming out of, just so you guys had that information ahead of time. I'll put Doug on the spot and help me if there's any of them that we don't have quite right, but he and I did talk about these, and that's where we came up with these. So any questions on this specifically?
I just had a question while we're starting in the whole list. Where's the budget coming from for all these?
It's the last item on every one of these lists the budget code that they're coming out of. So every one of my agenda items will have what the budget is. Is that what you're asking? I apologize.
Well, I just asked collectively, so they're all coming out of different places, I guess.
Yes, yeah. So the last bullet on every one of these should have the budget code that I'm using for each of these agenda items.
In this particular case, it'll be capital outlay. there's some issue, or some situations that it's going to come out of the 2018 bond.
And like this one has the capital outlay, special ed budget, and Dayton Creek FF&E because some of them are dedicated to Dayton Creek.
And Phil, you want to remind us what FF&E means?
Yeah,
for-
furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So it's part of the bond specifically, but it's the part set aside for technology, furniture, and other equipment like Kylie purchases for custodial services and those kinds of things.
When is our Apple agreement up? Or I guess it's not really an Apple agreement, but when is the next time?
Yeah, so
we'll
the
look
next
at-
rotation is 2 years out on the current MacBook fleet. We did a lease on that first one. You may remember it was a zero interest lease. So we're making 4 payments on that. The last payment is 2 years from now. And so then it would be available for us to reevaluate whether we're going to go another year. Really on the MacBooks, the biggest decision on whether we go a 5th year or not is the resale value of them. That's kind of the break point of where they really start to diminish in their value.
If we're doing a lease, then there is no resale. Am I missing something there?
Yeah, because it's a lease to own.
A lease to own.
Yeah, it's really just for installments.
Gotcha. And then that leads into my other question. I think you told us, I don't remember. How'd we do on the ones we turned in the last time?
I don't have that dollar figure committed, but I think we averaged around 200. We had some get more than that and some that got less, and it's all based on condition. The better the kids do at keeping the cases on and not dinging up the corners. I mean, corners are like, the dented corners are like a $45 hit right there, that kind of thing. So.
Okay.
I can get you I think I presented it, but I just don't have it committed to memory.
I don't remember it. I'm sure you did.
15 years ago, I probably could have given that to you, but
Same
mine
here.
doesn't work like that anymore.
So I see all the budget codes and everything, but is there, I mean, my biggest thing is the money there? And I mean.
I'm
it's
going to
under
defer to the
budget.
gentleman across the aisle here.
So, I mean, because we know we need this stuff, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, we still got a ways to go before we close out the 2018 bond proceeds. Probably my biggest fear factor is just the middle school number 3, where that number comes in at. And as long as it's not too high, we've got plenty of funds there. We dedicated 500,000 towards technology. So we'll be pretty much using all that up, but then we got capital outlay dollars, both this year and then next year with this board district administrative center being paid off. We'll have over 3 million coming in next year for capital outlay, and that's where our technology and a lot of our maintenance will go. So.
Yeah, when the board reinstituted the capital outlay, gosh, how many years ago was that? 4 years ago now, 3 years ago? I don't think the district realized how big a hit that we went 11 years without having a capital outlay. And so when he said $3 million, it sounds like a lot of money, which it is. But you also have to remember, we went 10, 11 years, 12 years without a capital outlay at all. So.
Yeah, Tim and I are aware. And Kylie's still suffering from it. So
we don't have as many duct tapes and wire as we
much
used to.
better.
So the other question I had, just on some of the payroll and claims, it looked like there were some repair costs on MacBooks on there. Did you notice like there was more damage to them since the kids had them at home more, or was it anything significant that you could tell?
It hasn't been significantly. I think some of the liquid damage may be a little bit higher, but the overall is about the same. I think one thing that's helped when the first half of the year, we worked really hard at just making sure they would tell us that they had them damaged. I'm a little bit nervous. We are going to try to turn them in at the end of the year. And the building staff has been doing a really good job of trying to catch ones when they see keys missing or they see something damaged, just getting them a loaner and getting it processed. But when we get them all back in our hands, just because we haven't seen them for 2 full years, I'm a little bit nervous about what we might get then, but we've got a really good relationship with a repair company, and we're evaluating another company right now to try to help. The biggest problem we've had is getting parts. My guys have been trying to do a lot more of the repairs in-house, but we're just having trouble getting the actual parts for them. So And of course, the companies we use aren't willing to give theirs up, so.
Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. President, I move we approve the purchase of the Apple equipment as presented in the amount of $438,415.
Second.
It's moved in second to approve the purchase of Apple equipment as presented. Any final questions or discussion? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to Chromebooks and Chrome licenses, Dr. Burke.
We're gonna leave this up to Phil for a while.
All right. Similar to the last one, lead times on Chromebooks that we want are pretty significant. We do have this particular quantity reserved. And so if we can process this tonight, we will get this. We have this is an upgrade to the one we've been using at our elementary schools. We have, these are a 12-inch screen instead of an 11, because one of the feedbacks we got was that the screen was a little bit small to do some of the activities that they wanted to do. It does have an upgraded processor just because of time. And then the digitizer that we're using, they had pens available for the last one, but there was no place to store the pen. And that's one of the things that the elementary school teachers were asking for. Is there a way we could get pens for all of our, yes, we can give you the pens, but there's no place to keep them. And so we're just worried about the revolving door on those. So this particular one actually has a dock. They call it a garage for the pen. And so, but it is the full 2-in-1 device that becomes a tablet. It has both the front and rear facing cameras that they can use for projects. And then it also has a little bit longer battery just because it's a bigger chassis. So the battery life's a little bit better, which hasn't been a complaint to this point anyway. This quantity takes care of growth. So basically just the addition of elementary school students and then the scheduled replacement of the devices that are over 4 years old. These are primarily used 2 through 5, and then it's the devices that our elementary school teachers use as their portable computer because they have an all-in-one desktop similar to this at their desks.
So these will be going just spread out all across different schools.
Yeah, all 5 elementary schools.
Okay.
Just saying that, by the way, makes me all 5 elementaries. When I took this job, we had 1.5, so that's kind of why.
Same here.
Any other questions? Any other questions or discussion on Chromebooks and Chromebook licenses?
I did want to make one quick comment. I think one of the things we were pretty fortunate. I actually wanted these be replaced or at least have the opportunity to replace these last year. There was 0 inventory last year at this time because everybody was scrambling to take advantage. And so we were very fortunate that they made it through, but I did want to recognize the board and the district for allowing us to be in a position where we didn't have that panic that a lot of districts had. And it was because we'd already set up a lot of this and established these systems that we were able to be a little more nimble than some of them. So just thanks for your good guess, good planning, whatever the right term is.
That's kind of you, Phil, but I think we did that under your advisement.
I'm just trying to keep up.
Oh, I mean, you put the system in place to keep them ready, so we appreciate you. Mr. President, I move that the board approve the purchase of Chromebooks and Chrome licenses from CDWG as presented in the amount of $673,010.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve Chromebooks and Chrome licenses as presented. Any final discussion or questions? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to Windows desktops. Phil?
All right, so these are for the staff locations at Dayton Creek and a few other select locations throughout the district. Primary reason we're trying to keep this quantity as low as possible is the rest of the Windows fleet is actually up for replacement next year. And one of the things that I think we're going to talk about as we evaluate curriculum and curriculum needs is whether this is the right device for the teachers at the elementary school for next year. And but I was just short enough that I couldn't fill Dayton Creek out of inventory completely. We are going to keep the lab the same as the other elementary schools because I was able to do some moving around and do that. So these are just going to go on the staff locations. Next year, if we go a totally different direction, we've got other places where these can be cycled into so they won't be a waste. We'll repurpose them, but because we have labs at the high school and things like that we could put these into. But I wanted to make sure that we didn't just do all of the school. So we're going to use up all the inventory that we have and little beg and borrowing from here to get only a small portion of the new systems in place. These are the same all-in-one chassis design that we have at all the elementary school locations. I did want to point out, this was directly from Dell. As I've mentioned to you years past, the whole bidding concept is kind of gone away especially in the technology sector, because manufacturers are allowing vendors to register the client. And once they register the client, they get the best price, period. And so it's even hard to get people to bid on something if they know they weren't the first one to register, because it's a waste of their time. They know that coming out of the gate because the other people get such a big discount. I did want to make sure that Dell was giving me a good price on these. So I did go to Converge One, who used to be Alexander Open Systems, that we worked a lot with. And I said, hey, can you just work this up real quick? Don't spend a ton of time on it, but find out what your best price you can get. I included that in here just so you know. It was $948 to get it through distribution. And so I feel good about the price Dell has given me. It is a contracted amount. I put a link to the contract in there so we know for the auditor later that we've got that covered. That's one of the things that Doug and I both try to make sure is available in the board notes for the auditor. But I just wanted to point out that it is getting more and more difficult for us to even get competitive pricing because of the registration process that the manufacturers do. So be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. President, I move for approval as presented.
Second.
It's moved and seconded for approval of the Windows desktop computers as presented. Any final questions or discussion? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to classroom display technology for Dayton Creek.
Yeah, so this is the standard design that we have throughout the rest of the district, the projectors, the screens, the cabling. We do all of that after the contract or outside of the contract as part of the FF&E budget, as we talked about before. This is a state contract pricing. And all of it is coming out of the Dayton Creek FF&E budget. Be happy to answer any questions.
And so this just aligns it with
Yep.
the rest of our elementary
Yep.
schools. Okay. The other four. Go ahead.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve classroom display technologies for Dayton Creek Elementary School in the from SciTech Media Systems in the amount of $62,124.
Second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to approve the classroom display technology for purchase for Dalton Creek Elementary School as presented. Any final questions or discussion? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes,
Approved.
very good. Thank you. Moving on to Cisco networking for Dayton Creek Elementary School.
So similarly, this is the network switches for the closet, the wireless access points for the classrooms, the telephones on the teachers' desks that we also use for overhead paging and intercom usage, and then the associated licensing that goes with that. So, this one is from Converge One, as I mentioned, formerly the Alexander Open Systems, but they are using the contract. I've listed it there as a third bullet. And again, this is coming out of the FF&E line item.
Any final questions for? No.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the Cisco networking and telephone hardware and licenses for Dayton Creek Elementary in the amount of $110,406.01.
Second.
It's moved to 1 penny, right? You got that?
Hey,
let's go ahead and
I
estimate.
just copied and
It's
pasted.
an accurate estimate. It's moved and seconded to approve Cisco networking for Dayton Creek Elementary School. Any final questions or comments?
I have to say that that's because of the good discount that Cisco gave. It's a flat percentage, so.
Penny. Okay. Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell.
Yes.
Approved.
very good. Thank you. Moving on to copier replacement. Phil?
Yeah, it's me again, Margaret. We talked about this at the last meeting. This is replacing at least one copier in every building. We chose a few years back to purchase instead of lease. And this is kind of one of the benefits from that. We have some high mileage copiers that will be cycling out and then relocating some that have some lower mileage to get some extended life. But it's in the same line with the same support contract we've been using.
Yeah, any questions for Mr. Elliott?
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the purchase of copiers from Sumner One in the amount of $76,920.31.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve copier replacement as presented. Any final questions or comment? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Approved.
very good. Moving on to Spring Hill High School tennis court repairs.
We're gonna let Phil take a break, but don't go far. Kylie, when you want to visit with us about these tennis court repairs.
Good evening. So the tennis courts at Spring Hill High School are in need of some pretty extensive repairs. Mr. Meek spoke about it last board meeting in his construction updates. Just a kind of 20,000 foot overview, we're looking at replacing the 6 net posts on 3 courts. The cracks will be filled throughout the court. A special fabric will be laid over the cracks that they did fill. And then they will repaint all the courts and all the lines, basically. So that's pretty much it. I'm asking that the board approves the proposal from McConnell Associates for $82,575.
Some of the cracks go actually under the fencing, so they're gonna have to remove some of the fencing in order to fix the cracks.
That's
pretty
correct.
expensive as well.
Yes.
So help me understand what bird bath filling is.
Bird bath is basically when it rains, there's a area that holds water on the court. So after it's done raining, you can see it sitting there and the birds like to get in there and
Okay.
take a bath essentially. So
All right.
they'll fill those in and
Yeah.
flatten them out so they don't hold water.
It took me a minute, but I came around to that.
And kind of the follow-on question I have for that, Kylie, is there some kind of subgrade compaction issue underneath there that needs to be corrected? If you have something settling, is there something that needs to be filled in? Is there more structural? Is there something that needs to be done to that would create better support?
The bird baths are not really that bad, to be honest with you.
Okay.
So they did look at that. I mean, I did have them look at doing a total tear out of this, the whole tennis courts, just to see what that would entail. But McConnell's doesn't believe that really needs to be done because there is no major settling issues happening on the court.
So it's just kind of a localized settling of material, and then it's not a structural. I think of our parking lot out here. That's what I thought of when I heard.
Yep, that's
about the
correct.
bird baths.
Well, there was also in the checks for payment, we had all the trash and enclosure posts and whatnot replaced. I mean, it seems like a repeating issue at the high school. Like, I don't know if it was when they put it all in, they cut some corners, or I was thinking the same thing you're thinking is.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of concrete on those net posts, right?
Yes,
I
there
saw
is,
that.
yes. And there is some pretty significant settling on those net posts. But not on the court itself, so.
Yeah, well, those pictures were very helpful.
Yeah.
To visualize what you're doing. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions?
I was just thinking the same thing you were thinking is are we better off just to start over, or really patching a tire with 10 patches on it?
Right.
Well, I think the time to do it would be if somebody had mentioned maybe adding a couple at some time in the future in a bond issue.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
I think at the next bond issue.
Yes.
And we'll have to do one in a few years. I think the idea is to add a couple more courts and just spend the money and redo the whole thing.
I'd agree. I think that's a good idea, yeah.
And the folks, the consultant or the professionals you have that gave us this bid basically said, tearing it out is not the thing to do. Fixing it at this time is.
That's correct. The price to tear it out is a lot.
I'm sure.
It's like way over the top, so.
Do
the
they
way
do
that
that?
I'm
Do
sorry.
they do that? Like,
Yeah, they can. Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions?
Not really a question, just kind of a comment that I think in the future, if there was courts added, I don't know if there would be any discussion about adding a hitting wall. But I know that when my kids were playing tennis, that was something that, so if you go out by yourself, that you have a wall to hit against, there's really no place in town to be
Right.
able to do that. So, anyway, for the future.
I'll take notes on that for next time, so.
Any final questions or additional questions?
Mr. President, I move we the board approve the bid to repair the tennis courts as presented.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to repair the Spring Hill High School tennis courts as presented. Any final questions for Kylie? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start the vote with Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. Moving on to the enterprise lease proposal, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, this is something that Doug Swin did a lot of research on, and he's will stand for any questions. Just a reminder that state bid allows us to be able to buy vehicles at a great discount. And the idea is that we could actually drive these for a year, maybe even 2 years, and then still sell them at the amount that they're worth. And then it would give us the ability to have a fleet of vehicles that basically brand new fleet. And then the resale value will just kind of keep rotating it. So as long as the state bid is there, we're in pretty good shape. Doug, you have anything you want to add?
No, I'll stand for questions.
Doug, we've been contacting a little bit in email. You had said one today and I just got that. Basically, does that mean you have to keep it for 2 years before you can flip it?
No, what I learned recently in visiting with Ken is that when you buy a vehicle from the manufacturer, from the date it is delivered, you got to hold on to it for 1 full year before you actually resell it. So, but the good news is everything that we're pretty much looking at flipping is real close to that window, if not past that window. So the biggest hurdle we'll have as far as the first round of flips is getting the replacements in because of the time it takes. We don't want to give up a truck or a Suburban and then not have the replacement ready. So as soon as we get this in place and pending board approval, we'll start making those plans to get those vehicles ordered and on their way so that we can then turn around and flip the ones that we own.
And we're going to continue to do the Traverse and also?
There's some other models, but it'll be similar size. We may go with not necessarily the Suburban, but help me out, Ken, what's the Tahoe? The Tahoe is a good safe model too that'll hold quite a bit. So we'll evaluate the needs and make sure that it's like what we have now and can still function like we need it to.
Okay.
We really like the Traverse because it was a little smaller, but it still carried 8 people. And so that's one of the things that we talked about is whether it's a Tahoe or something very similar, because the student drivers use those vehicles. So we've got 3 right now, I believe.
Yeah.
So we'd continue like having a smaller vehicle so that for driver's ed.
Yeah, and our driver's ed instructors have said those made really good. Once we got the brake issue figured out, they've made really good driver's ed vehicles. So.
Will that brake issue, taking the brakes in and out, will that fall to enterprise? Or are we going to use a local still, or how do you?
We hadn't really talked about that. I'm sure they probably offer that as a. Yeah.
Just so in case somebody's out there listening, it's not a brake issue with the vehicle. It's it's the brake for the
instructor brake.
So I don't want somebody to think, oh my gosh, they have brake issues.
No, we don't want to leave those instructor brakes in when the staff is using those vehicles. Yeah, if there'd have to be a fight going down the road, it could get kind of ugly with 2 people operating the brake. So no, this is strictly an instructor brake for driver's ed instructors.
Good clarification. Yeah.
Clarity is good.
Yeah, I think this is a great program. I don't see how we can lose on this.
I've heard nothing but good things from my colleagues, and some of them have been doing it a few years and speak very highly of the program. So,
like you said, the state will never take away that bid because they want their cars too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other final questions for Doug? Or we have a representative from.
Yes, Ken Olson's here tonight in case you got a really detailed question, stump me. So he's here and available if you need to speak with him.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve the enterprise lease proposal as presented.
Second the motion.
It's moved and seconded to approve the enterprise lease proposal as presented. Any final questions or comments? Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. And thank you, Doug, for being diligent.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
Working this out. Moving on to action item, Spring Hill School District Nurses Working Clinics. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, one of the things that with the vaccine clinics, our nurses had offered to volunteer work. And we were under the assumption that they were going to be working under the authority of Children's Mercy. And then Children's Mercy sent us an email saying that they were wondering if they were working under our authority. So the nurses would like to go ahead and work these clinics if they still continue, but they would need to be as employees of us and fall under our insurance. In talking to our insurance carrier, I mean, there is some liability for us, but the main liability is for negligence. So just basically trying to give somebody a shot, unless they're negligent, there shouldn't be an issue. So with that, they would like to be able to do that. We don't want to leave them, if they want to do this and we're willing to allow them to do it, we'd like for them to do it under our insurance.
Is there any kind of district policy or personnel procedure or something where they can't apply to work at these clinics, like as a extra work outside of the school and apply with the vendor that's doing the clinics?
There's nothing that I know of that keeps them from doing it outside of the contract time.
Okay. You mean like if they contracted directly with Children's Mercy?
Right, right.
Yeah.
Like I said, when this was originally brought to us, we were surprised because we made the assumption, should never assume, but we made the assumption that they were contracting under Children's Mercy. But my understanding, it was the Children's Mercy's attorneys that basically sent that and asked us. So I know that our nurses would like to be able to do this, but again, they don't want to do it without the protection of the insurance.
These clinics could be anywhere.
The ones we're specifically talking about are vaccines in our area. So we wouldn't send them over to Missouri, or we wouldn't send them up to necessarily Wyandotte, but it would be clinics that were in our area, Johnson County or Miami County.
Would Children's Mercy be paying for them to do that?
That I don't know. I don't know if they pay for the people who work the clinics or they would be volunteering, but they would have to work for us. So I mean, one thing that we could do is that we could say any amount of money that you're paid from them would have to be flow through back to us, since we're
So
paying for their time.
They would be doing this for free.
No, we're paying them to be there.
That's what I was just asking. Are we paying our staff to do this?
We would be paying them to do this, yes.
They're just getting their normal pay and it's during working hours is what's going on.
It may be after hours, maybe on weekends.
I find this a very peculiar request from Children's Mercy.
I agree.
To ask, I mean, I can't imagine if Children's Mercy called and asked us in my hospital to donate 20 nurses and we would still pay them from our hospital and assume the liability, but go provide the labor there for their hospital. I don't know why we would take on the liability for Children's Mercy. Nothing completely in support of our nurses, but I think it's a very strange ask from Children's Mercy.
I don't disagree. I just know that when we went to those clinics, it wasn't just all employees from Children's Mercy at those clinics. There were quite a few other people working there from other school districts as well.
Right. So just
Our nurses would like to be able to do that.
And looking into it today, I was like, even in my own outside of my board role, if I wanted to go outside of my professional role, I could go and apply and contract with them and be an employee of theirs on weekends. And so I don't know why, I'm not sure why we're involved, I guess is what I'm saying.
Do you have any idea? I mean, to me, there's the liability issue, but there's also, we don't have any idea how much this would cost us really, because we don't know how many hours they'd work and how many of them want to work. And
well, we can control that. I mean, we're not just going to turn an unlimited amount of time. The clinics that we've been aware of were the ones that had to do with employees of the school districts, now the 6 school districts, but they are starting to want to do clinics that are available for the public, students that are 12 and older. And I do know that we've had nurses asked to do that. we can limit it. It's not going to be, unlimited amount of time or money for them to do that.
I mean, I want to be supportive of the whole group effort of the getting the country vaccinated and all that stuff. I'm just not sure whether it's our responsibility to pay for it and to assume the liability for it. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I'm concerned about the liability too.
So
I know what negligence means.
I would propose that we remove this as an action item and get some more clarification around it. Ellie, I think you brought up a good point, Brent. Sharon, I think it's important that we're crystal clear, and we have several questions. We've had 5 or 6 different questions in the last minute and a half. I think that's just too much ambiguity around an action item. So my recommendation was we remove it from an action item and bring it back as a discussion. And
do that.
And I guess, Dr. Burke, if you could get some more clarification about exactly what it is that Children's Mercy is asking, because I'm not sure I have a clear understanding of what it is they're asking. It sounds to me like they're just asking us to cover their insurance. In order to do that, we still have to pay them. And I just want some more, just as Sharon said, I completely support our nurses, and I think it's admirable that they want to do this. But I think it's important that we look at the risks and the potential liabilities to the district so that we're clear on that. And so it's, what is it that they were really asking? You talked about what our insurance provider said, it's just around negligence. I'd like to have Greg Goheen provide us maybe a clarification or a summary of clarification for us with respect to the potential legal liabilities.
Typically, there'd be some sort of contract or something on paper, I would think, with something like this, not just a.
Yeah, I'm struggling with the why, right? Why
That's what I'm
is it
struggling
that,
with. I'm struggling with why are we involved in it?
right?
I mean, as a nurse, you can go and get those, there's many jobs out there that you could volunteer and give vaccinations. I'm all for, I support anybody who wants a vaccination, anybody's personal choice, and support our nurses, but I don't understand why the school district is in the middle of that with, especially with liability.
So does that, is it clear, Dr. Burke? I want to make sure that we get the clarity of questions.
We'll work on that and get you some answers.
All right, very good.
We'll work on that and get some answers to you.
I guess that's just a recommendation or a suggestion for me. If is there a general consensus? Okay. Good. Moving on to discussion items. First is elementary social emotional curriculum renewal. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Brad Wilson.
Thank you. I actually have a presentation partner, Tammy Endicott, is going to help me with this. First of all, this is for our social emotional curriculum, which meets our strategic plan. Obviously, one of our 2 strategic plan areas with helping kids find purpose in social emotional learning. It's also a requirement for our accreditation through the state. This is actually a renewal request, as we do have 2 schools that are currently using this curriculum for their social emotional learning, which is Spring Hill Elementary School and Prairie Creek Elementary School. But we're moving towards making sure that we have consistent resources so that it doesn't matter what building of our 5 elementaries, that the teachers have consistent resources that they get to use. They don't have one resource in one building and then they don't have it in a different building. At the same token, we want our students to have similar experiences and have the same resources as well. This is also an ESSER eligible expense if Doug would choose to use those monies for it. So I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Endicott, who is actually an expert in this area, much more than I am.
I wouldn't call myself an expert by any means, but we've been using it for 5-6 years now, or our version of it. And all the elementary principals did get together and kind of talk through the leader in me, as well as some other programs. And one of the things we liked about Leader in Me and the 7 Habits is the 7 Habits can be used with any problem that a child comes up against once they know the 7 Habits. And I think that is really important. And kind of, we have used it that way at Spring Hill Elementary School because we use it every time there's a behavior, anytime a child comes to the office, anytime they're having a responsibility center discipline conversation in class. I have heard it in the conversations that are happening during English language arts, science, and social studies. They apply these habits to some of the characters that they're learning about or historical figures. And it just provides a lot of leadership opportunities for them, which I know is something that we really want to do for our students. It also provides a way for students to really identify their weaknesses and really capitalize on their strengths. And that has become very important for all of our students. Sorry, my phone is going off. All of our students, but also especially our more at-risk type students. They are really finding their strengths and finding their path in our school. And it also provides a lot of community. And so I think I've talked to you about this at board meetings for Spring Hill Elementary before, but through our leadership crews, it's K-5 that are mixed, and those K-5 students see each other in the hallway. They just become a huge school community. They take ownership of the school. They are planning things for the school. It becomes their school instead of the staff school, and they're just there to attend. It is their school, and they're making decisions, and they have leadership opportunities, and it's just been a really great thing at Spring Hill Elementary. I also know that they kind of take ownership of learning with their leadership notebooks, the goal setting that they do. It ties nicely to the middle school program that's being used, and the resources and training that is provided with this. I know our staff would be very thankful for, as when we use our own versions of it, they are finding their own lessons and researching and doing a lot of that. And I know that the resources that come with Leader in Me are vast. And so I know that would be a great help for our teachers as well. So Mr. Wilson asked me to just kind of speak for a few minutes on my experience with Leader in Me. I am a big fan of Leader in Me and think it would be a great program for all of our students across the district.
Thank you, Ms. Endicott. Additionally, I can remember being at a site council meeting for Spring Hill Elementary School, and one of Mrs. Endicott's teachers was talking about that the seek first to understand and then to be understood was one that she was working on, and it was a nice connection for her and her kids that she was working on some of these same habits that the kids were working on as well. With the district license as well, it does come with some additional assessments and a way to have data for that allows the buildings to see reports and really analyze where their kids are at in a different way. Both Mrs. Endicott and I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I remember hearing this presented at a site council or something, but are the 7 habits the same 7 habits as the big book for grownups?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Brett. There's a kid version of 7 Habits of Happy Kids, and then the adult version, but they pretty much mimic each other. They're just more in more kid-friendly terms.
Gotcha.
I really don't know much about this, but just looking at the website, the second bullet point says the families are the partners. I like that.
Yeah, that's specifically stated in our goal, isn't it? And the other part of this is Franklin Covey's work. So these have been around for years and years and are used by business leaders all the way down to elementary students.
I know just what I recall from site council meetings that it's pretty impressive and seeing the kids and the students and how engaged they get, and how they become a part of it, and how it really does become their school. And it's pretty impressive what we were shown in site councils. So if I understand this right, so the district has a membership, and then each school within the district has an additional membership. Is that?
Yeah, so it can get really expensive to license schools by themselves. And so they allow you to do a district license that allows you to then actually train your own trainers through their organization. And then your district trainers actually go to the buildings and train the teachers in the buildings. That saves you about $100,000 if I remember right. I may have quoted that incorrectly, but yeah, to train buildings individually, then you have to go through their trainers and their training. If you get a district license, first of all, you get the data and assessment piece with that, but also the training then is they train your trainers. And so those would be internal people that are certified trainers of the Leader in Me.
So we create the trainers, or they create trainers for us, and we give people an opportunity, professional development opportunity, right, to expand.
Yes.
Professionally into.
And that saves us significant amount of money by doing that for as a whole district instead of trying to do each building individually.
And then the individual school memberships are just materials. Is that, it's just material costs?
Yeah,
or-
it's really as much as anything access. A lot of it's digital, but it's access to their lessons and materials and those types of things. There are some materials listed on the district quote that is up there. I'm not exactly sure why she put that on there. Her comment to me was, oh, you can just cross that off, but we will not be purchasing those district materials. They're things like puppets and that type of thing. It's not a significant amount of money, but we won't be purchasing those.
So Tammy, if you had just the greatest advantage that you've seen through the use of this program at Spring Hill Elementary School, what do you think that would be?
I believe it is each student finding their place in our school and building their leadership and their own self-worth within our community.
That's a pretty powerful statement, is to know and have a source and know what is creating leaders within your community, within that elementary school community. So, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Tammy or Brad?
Actually, I do. I'm just perusing their website here. Is there a guest login possibly?
I don't know that answer.
No?
I can ask our rep.
When I tried to look at it, it wanted me to sign up. So
yeah,
don't need to know right now. So just curious.
Yeah, maybe check that out and see if you could make it a part of.
I'm pretty confident we'll not have access to their resources because obviously that's would allow then other schools to get on that without paying them and downloading those. So, but it may have some like snippets and some example lessons. So I will check with that.
Okay.
We actually haven't looked real deeply at their review because we've been using it in our schools. So we're pretty familiar with it. But yeah, certainly to allow you guys to look at it, I'll see what I can do. I'll send that to you guys in an email.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Endicott or Mr. Wilson? Okay, moving on to bond construction update. Dr. Burke.
Yeah, Tim Meek's gonna share what's going on.
There we go. I'll let the technology guy do what the technology guy does here first. Okay, if I can not mess it up, we'll be good. Oh, that was not the right one. There we go. Bond budget for 2018, no change from the previous one, so we'll move on through pretty quickly here. Education Support Center, we're still working to get through our financial on that. Dayton Creek Elementary School, a couple of exciting milestones that happened last week. The they're working hard on the landscaping around there, as long as the weather holds out, which we've got a good week for it this week. We'll continue. Furniture delivery will start on May 3rd. Mr. Elliott and his team are working on our permanent network connection through the a couple of providers there. They're finishing up the punch list. They're 98%, 99% done with the punch list items on the inside of the building. We're beginning owner training on it. The nice thing about these buildings, a lot of things are very similar to the other buildings. So it doesn't take a lot of time for owner training because we're using a lot of the same equipment and things like that. But that's all coming up in the next couple of weeks. We do have the TCO for the building. So it's conditional TCO. Basically, we got to make sure we finish all of the site work and stuff like that. So that's a success. The other success was Case Irrigation. They're a sub of our landscaping contractor, and we've had them on several jobs, and they just always do a great job for us, get it done in a great timely manner. Out there working cold, rain, whenever they can. If it's not too muddy, they're out there getting it done, and they've got ahead enough that we're ready for sod to be going down. The one challenge we've had is Zimmerman Construction. They're a longtime partner, but right now they've got a little more work than they can handle, and they've been struggling getting in some final little bits and pieces, getting some simple things like the numbers that go on the side of the backboard so that you know that it's a 10-foot or whether it's at 8 foot. So a few little parts and pieces they've been struggling to finish up, but they're a long-term contractor, and we still will use them in the future, but we've let them know that they've got to step up. So safety report, 0 accidents, 0 lost times, and that's been for 327 days. A couple pictures, you can see the parking lot's done, striped. It's really, Mr. Elliott called me the other day and he said, and I'd ask you guys the same, if you want to drive out there, come in Dayton Creek and drive up towards the building, and it sets up on the hill there pretty nicely, and it's kind of a neat building when you start pulling up. You can see the gymnasium and one of the classroom pods there. Mr. Lang and Mr. Brown have worked real hard to get the floors finished, and the final cleans are getting done as well. You can see our front entry there. I've got the floor cleaned, but no wax on it yet, but it still looks really, really nice there. Playground are finished up now, so we move on to there. Spring Hill Middle School, scheduled to open in fall of 2023, 191st and Ridgeview. While we say it's pre-construction phase, that's pre-construction of the building. The site work, if you've been by there, is going, if you've gone down 191st Street, you'll actually see the drive that comes off 191st Street coming up into there. The contractor has, Kissick Construction has worked on some days when I was shocked that they worked, but they've continued, they've kept the site draining well so they can continue to do their work. They've done a great job there. So, building structure bid will be on 4/14, so 2 days from now. We plan to bring that to the board on the 26th for approval. And at that time, we said that we had pending review when we had to do this, but we have since got stuff back from Spring Hill, and the review came out good, so we don't have any major changes that they were asking for. So you can see from above, that's 4/5, that's a week old, and it's looking different than that. A week makes a lot of difference. Mr. Anderson, I think it was, and maybe Mr. Hoffman asked about the safety report. And after you said that, I thought, I think I'd give that to you. And I did back on the 2016, but that's just a real quick rehash of it. On the J.E. Dunn projects, we had 385,000 hours. We had one recordable injury, and that was actually, if you remember back, that was a accident that happened in the back of one of the contractor's own trucks. Questionable whether it was really even a recordable for us, but we felt like we wanted to record it just because that's the right way to do it. The Nabholz project had 29,000 man hours and 0 recordable injuries. I can tell you right now that we're 197,000 hours for the 2018 bond issue at this point. That was as of Friday, I think roughly we're at 197,000. So, and we've had no recordable injuries or accidents on that as well. So,
Excellent. Thank you.
Other construction projects, the district admin center, you guys are seeing the fruit of it right now. We've got a little bit of lighting to finish up in this room so we can dim lights right here. There's some control work that's going to happen on the 14th as well. Complete the project as far as the financials go. There's a little bit of site work that's got to be finished up by getting rid of the trailer site up there and taking that down. And hopefully this week we can get that if the weather stays good. Challenge successes, staff relocation from the BOE to DAC. That was quite a success. You know, it's amazing to see what we can do as a staff here when we work together. And I think Spring Hill does that as good as anybody. You know, to have this place up and running by noon or just shortly after noon of the day we start the move is pretty incredible. So the other one is SciTech Media, the ones that came in to do the media stuff. They do a phenomenal job. They're a great company to work with. You know, it's why we keep wanting to partner with them as well. So, and on that safety report that I gave you, the 197,000, that includes this building as well, this site as well. So Spring Hill Elementary School paving, not really any change from what I've reported in the past, starting June, and we'll be done by the time before school starts. Spring Hill High School tennis court rehab. I will touch base and add a little bit to what Kylie said here. One thing to remember, these are 15-year-old tennis courts. During most of this time, we had no capital outlay, so we did a lot of Band-Aids across those. A lot of patching that was just basically, let's fill the hole in and repaint it with some patch across them. What Kylie's proposing is a great system that should help us quite a little bit. So, well, appreciate that, moving forward with that. Solar panel project, that's gonna, you might see some people out in that area over the next couple of weeks doing a little survey work and stuff like that to get everything staked and everything, but we're going to start construction just as soon as school's out on that, and it'll be done by about the time school starts next year.
Are they putting in a temporary road out there, or?
There'll be they have to be able to access it all the time.
Right.
So it won't be anything great. It'll just be a gravel pathway to get back there. So I've got Mike here with J.E. Dunn. I appreciated him showing up. I didn't know whether or not I would make it tonight, and him and Kylie volunteered to step in for me, and that's one of the great things about working here at Spring Hill is the fact that when you need people, they're always willing to help out. So, any questions?
Candy, could you drop the safety report into our library so I can find it later? It's in the construction. It's a page in the construction update. Thanks.
I'll let Mr. Elliott take care of getting it off the screen. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Moving on to land farming, the 175th and Ridgeview. Dr. Book.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Phil Elliott. We have quite a very cool, unique proposal for you. Sometimes thinking outside the box can be very beneficial. So I'm going to turn this over to Phil. He did all the work, so we'll let him share it with you.
So just wanted to kind of get a temperature gauge from the board, a little bit of direction if you have something different than what we proposed here. But for a couple of reasons, the first being we don't need it immediately. But obviously the board's decision to get land in that area was critical. Another reason is those of you that have ever dealt with the federal government and things like wetlands and those are some challenging things to do. Farming is pretty much exempt from a lot of those things. And so there's a pond on the north end of this property that will not be beneficial to our future building. And so if we farm it for 5 years after the pond is gone, we're free and clear on the wetlands mitigation requirements. So one of the things we're wanting to do here is take advantage of an established farmer who's been farming that ground for the developer for several years anyway. And then he's proposing, and I'll kind of pull up here both of these maps real quick. So this map identifies the 175 acres, not sorry, 140 some acres at 175th and Ridgeview. There's a set of trees on this north end down here that are going to be kind of in the way. Some of those trees might end up being removed because the city of Olathe is actually doing an area retention just north of that property anyway. So it may be that they do some removal just in order to get their dam and things like that in place for that. The tree line that's here, our future plans for the elementary school, which I'll show you on the map in a minute, will actually show kind of protruding into this. One of the opportunities we get working with the city of Olathe is they are very, they like existing trees and they don't like us to remove them. We had a significant challenge on the southwest corner of the Timber Sage property where we had no other way to describe it, just an old farm hedgerow that they made us keep most of. And so now Kylie and his team have to manage hedge trees and hedge apples and everything else on, and try to make it look nice on the corner of the school property. So one of the other things that this will do is let us mitigate some of that and get some of these things out, use it for farming for 5 years. And then, and the trees aren't as big of a deal as the pond. And then the pond that I mentioned is here. And then this area along here, basically just straightening that out. Obviously we're not going to mess with the waterway itself, but these are outside of that waterway boundaries. And so we'll remove those. He was going to also do a little bit more research on some USDA terracing requirements, just to kind of help with some of the flow on that site, because there are some pretty significant elevation changes in the farm area. So let me open that other one real quick. And so again, this is that site with our tentative plans put over top of it. So you can see why removing some of those become important. We could take advantage. We're a little tight on athletic space here, so that would gain us a little bit. As I mentioned, the play fields and other protrude right into that tree line here. And then the high school parking lot or the staff parking lot. Again, this is just conceptual, but we know we need that square footage. And so we want to take advantage of that. So he's made an offer to do all of those things, including the demolition of the house and the barns. You may recall when we purchased that, we had an inspection and it was basically don't go near it. It was kind of how the inspection came out. And so he's also going to take care of demoing that in exchange for a 5-year lease on the property. If for some reason we decide we need to build on that property sooner than that, we'll just reevaluate the lease terms. Maybe we owe him a little bit, or maybe he gets a 6th year out of the rest. So I don't have any actual verbiage yet. I didn't want to do that and waste his time or Greg's time and taxpayer dollars to do that. But I just wanted to kind of share this concept with you and see if you had any concerns.
That's really good thinking to do that while it's still farm ground. Should have known that. Wouldn't think of it. How does that $75 an acre fall in with the cash rent in this area? I have no idea.
Yeah, it is more than the farmer directly east was willing to pay. I'll let you figure out who that was. We did a little shopping around, and it is right at, or maybe the top end of what they're getting. Part of the challenge they have in this area is access to the properties as it gets more and more developed becomes a much bigger challenge. So there's fewer and fewer farmers who are wanting to do this in these areas because they don't get the opportunity to feel safe as they're driving between fields. A lot of the drivers don't give them what they need.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think the 75 acres also takes into account all of the work that he's gonna be doing to get rid of the pond and trees and all that stuff too.
Yeah,
right?
and he was very competitive on that. I mean, his original estimate was a little high. I told him what our bid dollar was, and he says, well, I want this opportunity and I want the land, so I'll do it for
I
less.
mean, yeah, so I mean, we're a little on high end, but he's doing a lot of work for us on on developing the land to make it farmable, and then long-term for us, for the schools. Do we have a master plan for this so we don't deal with utilities and easements and stuff?
Yeah, I've got that overlay map already on there.
I just didn't know if that was the actual master plan that we keep people out from doing utilities and stuff.
Yeah, that we had DLR develop that.
We can do this, but we can do this, but what I want to be careful of is we may change what we want.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
yes,
it's
this
just-
will keep the utilities out, but this may not be the actual plan that we.
Right. Just want to make sure.
I think that's important to note because I think as soon as people see a map like this, they think it's set in stone and they think that's where the next high school and middle school and elementary, and this is just the idea. And right now we're just talking about farming the land, not talking about this is what the actual permanent plan is.
Because we had, and I'm sure the public knows, but we had plans for an elementary school north of the high school, but then we got a great deal for Wolf Creek, so that's why it's there. And so it's just plans change as time changes.
It's really conceptual. It's really about saying, will this fit here and how do we get everything we need to we'll need onto that piece of property. So it's just footprints and conceptual. It's not set in stone at all. It's just the idea of how to use that land. Any other questions?
I probably should know this, but what's the northern border of that? What would that street number be? I know it's not a street now, but
171st, yeah.
171st?
And right now, when we talked with the city, they're not going to require us, we've got it in writing from them that they're not going to require us to put that in, even though they normally require a half-mile road. Because it's basically stormwater north of there, a retention area north of there. And we're going to take the entire half section or quarter section below that. They're not requiring any cross streets between Ridgeview and Lindenwood. So it'll be the subdivision to the north that has to deal with some sort of collector, and then 175th.
I think this is a really good idea. I would encourage you to move forward.
All right, I'll put something together, maybe try to have something at least in conceptual for the next meeting. Obviously, he wants to get started, so.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Good thinking. Thanks, Phil. Moving on to software renewal and board policy, Dr. Burke.
Turn it back over to Phil.
All right, so this is one of these, hey, I probably should have been doing it different kind of things. So I've always brought new things to you, but when I renewed, it was the same thing that we're always doing. And it wasn't something that we brought as a new item or back for approval. And so in talking with Doug a little bit this year and just evaluating some of our bid and purchase processes, we reached out to the auditor, Doug reached out to the auditor and did recommend that we do one of two things. Either just continue to bring these back. We could make them consent agenda items if you wanted. They could be discussion items and action items if you prefer, or you could change the policy. And again, it doesn't have to be done today or even in the extreme near future, but where renewals would be exempt from requiring board approval. I wanted to give you some examples of something that came up this year. And actually the very last one is the one that made us have this discussion. The yearly agreement with Microsoft is based on our FTE. And when I first started it, it was less than $20,000. Well, we've grown, so has it. And so that one's not quite up for renewal yet, so I don't have an exact dollar figure, but it's going to be around that $24,000 number for us for this year. The Skyward Student and Finance System, that's the yearly cost for that. That's just something that was agreed upon, and we knew what that was when we made the original purchase. It's just that yearly maintenance fees that go along with that with those products. And then the Cisco Smartnet, similar, that actually came in about 56,000. We have a few projects that are going on where we're eliminating some equipment, and the new equipment we bought is already covered with Smartnet as part of the first year purchase. So that actually brought that down just a little bit. It's about 56,000. But the Genetech is the one that actually came up as the item that made us question what we were doing. And I apologize, there we go. A 1-year license was $11,000, but a 3-year was $26,000. And so obviously that brought it over, and that's actually the one that I reached out to Doug and say, hey, do we need to go to board approval for this? And then we realized, hey, we probably have some other ones we need to talk about. But the Genetech one, obviously it's saving significant amount of dollars by doing a 3-year instead of 1 year at a time for 3 years. It's the product that we've been using. We're happy with it. We're not looking at changing. But I just wanted to kind of get some feedback from you as far as what direction you prefer to go. Obviously, Doug and I and Dr. Burke have had some conversations about this, and it really doesn't matter to me. I just want to make sure that we're following board policy and getting these in front of you.
I think that, well, obviously we trust you in doing your job well. For me, I think we still need to vote on them, but I would rather just see them in consent agenda.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Just especially like as you have new board members coming on and stuff, just it brings up discussions that you have, so you're kind of more aware of things that you may not be aware of.
I agree. I didn't catch on to where you're going with this. I actually went through them, and I have a different question. I was wondering how often you audit these, or I was just looking at the Skyward. There's like a zillion things in there.
Yes, there are. And I can tell you with confidence, we use all of them and or are developing the use of all of them. We actually are adding a new one, just had some discussions today, an inventory module in order for the buildings to be able to request the paper, the toner, and the batteries that we're going to store in our warehouse.
That's great.
And so it's all in the same system. And then Doug's accounting will be able to bill the building's budget throughout the year from our inventory instead of paying a vendor.
Good. Excellent.
Any other questions for software renewals? I think that's where I was headed as well, Sharon and Jason, is that it would still come back, but be a part of the consent agenda.
You bet. Sounds good. Thank you.
Good. Review after school program and contract, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this over to Brad Wilson. I will say that we're very fortunate to work YMCA and YCare. I don't even know his total title. Mr. Mikos came and met with us last week, and I think he's over the YMCA for the area. And the fact that he came in and sat down and talked to us and really loves working with Spring Hill, says that we're one of the easiest school districts to work with, is kind of nice. And we keep reminding him that on that after school program plus the PLC program that we were the first ones. And so as the bigger districts who may have more opportunities for them, I keep saying, remember who loved you first. And so he is very complimentary of our district, and hopefully we can work for him for quite a while. So, Mr. Wilson?
Yes, Mr. Mikos is a really impressive individual. He's the CAO for the Greater Kansas City YMCA. I did get an email from the executive director who just wanted to check in today. And he does that on occasion. And then the directors that we have actually that deal directly with our district do a phenomenal job. This agreement is the standard agreement that we have. In principle, it's the same as the one we have every year. Essentially, we do have a new school, obviously, but this is for the before school care, the after school care, and the summer school care. We have a separate agreement that covers the YMCA, and as of so far, that's been donated. And they have not indicated that they'd want to do anything different than that, assuming that we're going to provide the paras to do the work. But this is for before school, after school, and summer school. And they lease our facilities for what I would call a nominal fee. If there's some need for custodial services, those types of things, they do pay for our custodial services and those types of things. But they provide a great service for our families, tremendous service for our families. Do you have any questions over this?
I just had a quick question. I think you meant to say, I'm not sure you said it, but the separate contract was for PLC time.
Yeah, we have a separate agreement for that. And as of yet, that's always been donated. In fact, that's one of Steve's comments in his email today, is looking forward to talking about PLC as well.
I have no complaints about any of that. I just, since it's a free market type business, are there other people
Yes,
that do
there
things?
definitely are. In fact, we went out for a request for proposal. Dr. Burke, was that 2 years ago?
Yeah, it's 2 years ago.
Yep. And then then we had actually asked 3 people. There was only one other group that presented as well. High quality group, good, but when it came down to it, really, YMCA had a proven track record. They have had glitches in the past, but especially under this CEO, they have fixed anything that we've had an issue with. And it is probably, in my opinion, running as smooth right now as it has in several years, at least over the last couple of years.
Okay. Good to know. Just wanted to make sure we're listening to what else is going on.
Dr. Burke, do you remember the name of that company that we looked
I
at?
knew you were going to ask me.
Jake Ashley is the one that
Yeah.
did the presentation. They did a phenomenal job, but
It was going to, whereas the YMCA came in and they're donating for the PLC time, and then they'll make their money back on the after school. This would have, if I remember, it was significantly more in order to do that, but I can look up the name of it.
That's okay.
So this is the same contract, and I didn't see any changes in terms and conditions or costs. That's
not that I'm aware of. No.
The name of that company was Right at School.
Yes.
so no changes to this contract.
No.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can we add this to the consent agenda for next meeting?
I think we should add it. to
That's
the
probably a
consent
good place
agenda.
for it in the long run.
Yeah. All right, moving on to school resource officer agreement, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, this one's actually me. I talked to Chief Reese, and they, just a little bit of history. A few years ago, quite a few years ago, we had an agreement with the city of Spring Hill, and I think because of some issues with actually being able to staff that, we needed to go in a different direction. So we reached out to the Johnson County Sheriff's Office, and we have been with them for quite a few years. Now we have 2 SROs, and one of the things a couple of things that we love about it is if one of the SROs is not here, they get a substitute, which is really, really nice. We did not have that in the past. The other thing is, I think that there's over 5,000 members of the Sheriff's Department, and the resources they have is at the disposal of our SROs. And so the being able to cut through the bureaucracy and move quickly if we need some information has been just amazing. We're proposing a 3-year contract. It would be $14 a day per person. So it would be an additional $28 per day for each, or not for each, but total for the 2 deputies. Right now on line number 5, I believe we're paying I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I think we're paying $335. So next year it would go to $349. The year after that, 363, and the year after that, 376. We did add a second SRO last year. At some point, we may need to look at adding a third SRO. That's not as simple as contacting the sheriff's department and saying, will you give us an SRO? Matter of fact, I had to go before a committee last year and explain to them why we needed an additional SRO. The thing is, we're paying for 175 days. The county has to pay for the other part of time of that. So that goes before the Board of County Commissioners as well. So as we start looking at that and as we growing, especially when we move to a third middle school, it will be probably time to go, if not before, go to a third SRO. We've been very, very happy with them. I mean, the professionalism and quality has been amazing. You know, one of the biggest things about an SRO is understanding the difference between bad behavior or dumb decisions and criminal decisions. And an SRO really has to be able to understand, doesn't mean that we're forgiving criminal behavior. What we're saying is sometimes kids do stupid things. Doesn't mean that they need to go to jail for those things. Sometimes that's when you pull them aside and work with them and try to help them. Sometimes they do things that are criminal and that gets them arrested. So there is a difference. So our SROs, Deputy Pesnick and Deputy Ramos have just did a phenomenal job. So the contract, other than the time or other than the cost, are the same. And one of the things that has been really nice is they reach out to us every year, ask us concerns, what problems that we have, sit down with them and visit with them. And I can tell you that from what I hear about from the administrators, and I believe that one of the administrators even mentioned earlier today in the recognitions, they're not just doing work at the high school and the middle schools, but they're spending time at the elementary schools as well. So I'll stand for any questions.
Just kind of a general question, and I think I know the answer to it, but you know, reading things nationally with school districts and stuff, it seems like there's a trend to get some of the police out of the schools. That's not something that we're looking at, correct?
No. I think I cannot speak for other districts, but I can tell you in Johnson County, pretty much everybody has SROs. We feel like it's a good relationship, and we certainly don't feel like they've done anything that was overboard or harmful to our students. And so I think that's part of having a larger organization. They go through quite a vetting process, and then we were able to have input on that vetting process as well. So it's not just somebody that's just got hired, gets a little bit of training, and is all of a sudden an SRO. These people go through quite a bit of training.
I'm looking at the second PDF, and it's got all the breakdowns of the costs. That makes it look like they're an employee of ours. Is that true? Or I thought they're an employee of the sheriff's department.
I can't show you exactly where it is, but there is a term in here that specifically says they are not an employee of the school district, even though that we're paying part of their salary.
Then it's odd that they would break it down like that. But
That's
what
just
you
how
would see
they're
as an employer.
coming up with the cost that way.
Yeah, they're breaking down the cost.
What are they talking about with relief? Explain the relief? Is that, I don't know what that.
Meaning like when they're gone, maybe like vacation or or sick days or.
Tell me where you're talking about when you say relief.
It says relief, total without relief per duty, or per deputy, sorry. Glasses are fogging up.
The other.
That's probably if they replace, if they have to be gone for the day, they'll send somebody else.
It says relief and then percent of payroll cost.
Over here.
So we're not gonna pay extra for.
Is that like overtime?
No, it's for whenever, if Deputy Pechnick has to go to court or whatever, they'll send another deputy over to relieve him, so he can go to court and do his thing that way. And then we're not getting charged any extra.
Right.
That makes sense.
It says 2 deputies there, but there's been a couple times that they've had to go to court. They brought some. There's a couple times that we asked just to heighten awareness that they sent an additional deputy. Sometimes it's just a car sitting out there.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just a presence for a couple hours, and they've not charged us for that.
Okay.
So been pretty happy with that. There are some times that the deputies do things on our behalf, such as home visits and some other things as well. Depending on that, anytime that we're asking them to do that, we're paying for that. But I can tell you, there's plenty of times that Deputy Pesnick and I can't say for Deputy Ramos, but there's times that they were on their way out, that they went ahead and drove by somebody's house, checked on them. And again, we didn't see any extra bills on that.
So is there a limit to the hours, or do we actually pay them overtime if they're doing stuff like that?
Anytime that they've asked us to pay overtime, then we pay it. But Doug can tell you, I don't remember seeing hardly any overtime. The other thing that I will say is there's been a couple of times, unfortunately, there's been some funerals, and they've asked us to be able to be released to go to that. And that would leave us uncovered for a couple hours. We've always said yes. And they should be able to be there for their fallen comrades. So anytime they've asked us, but I can tell you it's never been more than an hour or two. And usually they let the local PD, whether it's Olathe or Spring Hill, know. And then there's also patrols that are increased. So, but I can only think of a few times that they've ever done that. But they do a great job of making sure that we're not uncovered. And if you remember in the past, there were quite a few times that we didn't have anybody here prior to the sheriff's department.
I would just think didn't have any input into the SRO selection either.
Yeah. I just would have thought there'd have been a lot of overtime, considering it seems like he's always here.
Well, if they're here for something like this, we're paying
That's
extra for that, but it may be Deputy Ramos or Deputy Pesnick, but it may be somebody else from the sheriff's.
I'm saying at the sporting events, it seems like he's always there, so it's good.
Just to piggyback on what Sharon said, if anything, I would be very in favor of adding the third SRO sooner rather than later. I think they're very busy and we appreciate them so much. And the students absolutely love them. They're involved with them all the time. They know them and they're so appreciated, but I know they're stretched pretty thin. So I would be in favor of adding a third SRO as soon as we could.
I also wanted to say that I appreciate the relationship we have with the Johnson County Sheriff's Department. I think this is a good arrangement, or actually a great arrangement for us, because we have essentially jurisdictional issues going, having schools in at least 2 cities. There could be someday we have it in 3 with Overland Park. It's just better to have the sheriff's department instead of trying to negotiate different arrangements with each city. The sheriff's department has already made those arrangements, and it's just easier for us to have one contract for the school district, and they do a phenomenal job. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I also want to compliment Miami County Sheriff's Department. They've deputized the Johnson County Sheriff's Department so that they can be in that area pertaining to the school district. So never want to be remiss or don't want to be remiss and not express our appreciation to Miami County as well.
Yep, thanks.
Any other questions or comments about the school resource officer agreement? So I think that can be brought back as well on the consent agenda.
Agreed.
Moving on to waste tire grant. This sounds interesting. Dr. Burke?
I'm going to turn this over to Doug Schwinn because this is all Doug.
All right, find the on button. Okay. I believe it was like 6 to 8 months ago, I was reading the City of Spring Hill newsletter that they put out. And I was reading about the new park they put in. I think it's Veterans something park over by the city lake, which I love to go fishing there. And I noticed that they put the park benches in using a waste tire recycling grant. So I inquired about it and realized, wow, there's some potential for some funding. So I got with Kylie and asked him if there was any projects that we might have where we could use grant proceeds to help fund it. And he mentioned that the current kindergarten playground at Spring Hill Elementary just has regular wood chips that they're maintaining. And so we got with our representative that has worked on other playgrounds for us as far as doing a pour and play surface. And we got bids from him, and I filled out the grant application and submitted those bids. And it came back that they're willing to fund 21,000 of it. So the overall project's close to 60. So 21,000 would be about 35% of the project. We have to do a 65% match, and we can get that playground up to the same standard as our other playgrounds in the district. So, but it is over 20,000, so it needs your approval. And if for some reason you don't want to do the project, I need to let them know so they can redistribute those funds to other grant winners. So you don't have to decide tonight, but if for some reason you're not in favor of this project, I'd probably want to let them know to release those funds and let them go to somebody else. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
What's the exact material again?
I'm wondering if it's in the grant. Let me pull that up and see if it's in the
Didn't see
grant.
it in there. But maybe it is, I think.
And you mean
I
it's more of
think
like a
they-
solid surface, right? Like not solid, but not
chopped up
chips,
tire.
not chopped.
It's not chopped up. It is a pour and play,
So,
meaning it's a
yeah.
solid
Right.
surface.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Isn't that what we have on some of the other schools as well, Doug?
yes, should be very similar. Is Kelly still here?
It says
Kelly, it's the same stuff we're already putting down everywhere else, correct? It is not. Oh. It's still a pour and play surface though, correct? Our other plate. Can you hear me?
Yep, there we go. Our other playground surfaces we have turf, obviously, at some schools, wood chips. This would be the first pour and play surface we have, so.
I thought
It's
there was something at Wolf Creek. There's some
Wolf
kind of-
Creek's turf.
If I remember right, did we have the chopped up tires like 4 or 5 years ago at Prairie Creek and we replaced it with wood?
That's correct.
Okay.
Different material though. According to the gentleman at the company, it's not there was a big controversy over that causes cancer, and it's a different type of rubber material that is certified.
So yeah,
Safe.
this would be better because it's pour and play and it's not individual.
Yes, and that's
chunks, for
true.
lack of a
It's
better word.
pour and play, it's solid. There's no chunks of rubber, so.
Probably a lot cleaner too, not as
Yes.
messy.
Mhm.
Doug, what was the total for the grant? I'm struggling finding that.
What's that?
21,190?
Yeah, 21,190.
Okay, okay.
So yeah, I'm looking at the quote they gave us. They're calling it PTN bonded rubber surfacing. 4,318 square foot to do that at 9 1/4. So it's about 40 grand just for that surfacing. But then you needed some curbing and stuff that you'll see a second attachment on, and some excavation and some compaction going on there to give it a good solid play surface. So I apologize, I misspoke. I thought the others are pour and play, but they're actually turf, but it'll be a similar solid, not a chewed up tire kind of play surface.
Kind of a soft, kind of has a bounce.
Yeah.
Just not ingestible.
What's that?
It's just not ingestible like the other tire.
Right.
Appreciate you finding this, Doug. That's neat.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I think.
Yeah, I kind of stumbled on it, so, and I heard I spoke to the gal and watched a webinar on it, and she goes, yeah, we pretty much fund almost everybody that applies, so she says, you have a good chance of getting money. And,
Awesome.
and so that got me a little excited, and it wasn't quite a 50% match. They try to match it 50%, but I thought 20,000 is 20,000. So, and it give the kids a little bit safer playing surface.
Yep.
And you don't have to have that annual cost of providing wood chips and the guys having to spruce it up when it washes out and all that good stuff. So kind of put it in and forget it for a while.
I learned that after reading all this, we should be in the tire business. They charge you 25 cents excise tax when you buy the tire. They charge you a tire disposal fee when you take it off your car. Then they'll sell them back to you for $1.40 a pound.
Yes.
It's like, holy cow.
So I guess I have a question. Look, just a quick search on their site. There's several different types of primo turf. Could we maybe find out when this comes back, what exactly they're wanting to put on there?
Okay.
Any other questions for Doug on the waste tire grant? Great work, Doug.
Yeah.
Way to,
Mhm.
you say you stumbled onto it, but it's still, you took action on it. That's important. Moving on to board meeting draft schedule for 21-22, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, if the board will allow, I'd like to go ahead and the administrators that are not going to be here or that don't need to be here, so we'll go ahead and release you. Get ready for school tomorrow. The board meeting draft schedule 2021-2022. It's pretty much reciprocal of the draft or of the schedule that we were supposed to have for this year. Notice we did go ahead and put the morning meetings in, but one of the things that we put in that the board talked about at your retreat is the 5th week of the month. And we went ahead and put those in as a board work session.
5th Monday.
Or I'm sorry, 5th Monday, sorry. So the 5th Monday of the month. So for next school year, there are 3 of those dates. And the board was wanting to go ahead and have some time that they could have some work sessions. So we went ahead and put that on here. But the rest of it, I believe, is very reciprocal. So with that, Candy and I'll stand for any questions.
Looks good, Dr. Burke. I think my recommendation would be to leave those 5th Mondays in there and board work session. If we need to, we can plan for them. If we need to cancel or reschedule, we can still do that. But I think it's important we have that opportunity there.
Does it give us 2 months that there's 3 meetings?
What's that?
2 months that there's 3 meetings, is that correct?
Right, there's 3 meetings.
January and August, be 3 meetings.
He's saying that there's 3 months, that there's 3
meetings.
Two.
November.
Okay.
November, there's.
All right. Moving on to National School Board Conference, Dr. Burke.
Actually, I'm gonna pass this on to Jason because I think he watched more of it than I did.
I tried to watch as much as I could. I didn't get to I only got to watch the opening keynote with Leslie Odom Jr., which was interesting. He's sang a couple songs and he's just phenomenal at that. So he talked about, he got, as we hear a lot of performing arts people, he had a teacher that really inspired him to keep going with singing, acting, that sort of thing. So pretty good conversation between the executive director at NSBA and Leslie Odom Jr. And then I caught a session on what they're doing at the federal government. I think it wasn't anything new to me. So just a lot of questions on funding, IDEA, trying to get that fully funded. We've been trying for 50 years to get that fully funded. So they talked about that. And then Friday, I didn't have a chance to get over to see any of the sessions. You think you can just kind of work it into your schedule and not take the day off, but I wasn't able to do that. And especially with the task force on Friday, task force meeting on 3 to 5 on Friday afternoon. So I can get slideshows if anybody wants to see anything. I think I can still get presentations and that sort of thing. I did see there was one about high performing boards, superintendent relationships. That was pretty interesting. There's a guy that wrote a book about it, so.
I'm going to echo what Jason said. When you're there, it's much easier to just commit the time. Because you can be watching and all of a sudden the phone rings or somebody's knocking on your door. There was quite a bit of discussion about the IDEA. I can tell you special education costs an enormous amount of money. And the federal government's never paid their full amount. The states never paid their full amount. And when but you still have the bills and you still have unfunded mandates. And so regardless of who's paying for the bills, you still have to meet the requirements. And so what isn't paid comes out of your general fund. And that's just the way life is. So there was a big push to talk about IDEA. Quite a few sessions on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that was a thread that was throughout. There were some regional meetings, though, that I thought were pretty interesting. You could take people from the Midwest and just have a roundtable topic and be able to visit with them. And so you were able to talk to people from, Iowa, Nebraska, and Oklahoma about, different things that you're seeing. Obviously, COVID was a lot. So hopefully next year we'll be able to all go and be in person. But yeah, virtual conferences are just, I think they tried very hard. It's just not the same.
I will say, and I'll give KASB props that I think they did a better job than a national conference. The topics and sessions were more relevant, and not that diversity and inclusion is not relevant. It's just, it was a lot of the conference and there wasn't a lot on other things that I think that were important to us. So, but I think KASB, especially, our closing session with the 8 pillars of trust was very, very good.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to items from Board of Education members for future meetings. Anything to add? I think.
Is there going to be a scheduled time for us to hear about the high school's career and tech ed stuff that they're doing with the Kauffman Foundation? And
Yeah, we will be bringing that. We'll be bringing that back. We're still we're on. I'm not going to. We're tier 3. Is that right, Brad? So I believe we're a tier 3 of the Kauffman. Only tier 1 is going through right now.
okay.
So we do have a planning grant, but we'll get with Mark and probably, it may be in the fall, but we'll do a full presentation on that.
Okay.
So I'm trying to give you updates about that, but it's one of those deals like we're part of it and we're getting to sit in, but we're once removed. So it's not even like, we'll do the planning grant next year, but we're like, there's a group in front of us and a group in front of them. So it's nice to be part of the game and hearing what they're talking about, but we're kind of back right now. But I know Brad and Mark Williams have been talking about what that planning grant's going to look like, and we'll give a presentation to you, but it may be in the fall before we are ready to do that.
Kauffman has, we got a grant for $75,000 to do planning for this upcoming year. We'll start it actually before that time. The last cohort 2 just presented about a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago. But I think if I'm right, we actually have to present earlier than that, right at the end of first semester, beginning of second semester. is when I think we have to have our plan. They call it their strategic plan together for that, which then is basically submit for a 3-year grant to fund our work-based learning.
But to answer your question, yes, we'll bring it back.
Any other items to add?
would like to get an understanding. I think I asked this probably 5 years ago and we got an answer, but I haven't heard from it for them. Is where do we still teach cursive writing, both reading and writing? We still, what grades do we teach and to write and read in cursive writing?
I don't know if I'd have to check with elementary principals on that. I don't know when we
It
teach
used to be
cursive.
third grade, but I don't know if we dropped it back to second or not, but it used to be third grade.
I have not heard that yet this year with my third grader.
I'm just curious.
So they started in second and then they'd ended in third, but that's a good question.
Yeah, we'll get it back for you.
Any other items to add to the list? Moving on to board work calendar. Dr. Burke?
I think other than the handbooks, and we were going to try to do that tonight, but a couple of the buildings asked for a little bit of time, but other than that, I think we're right where we should be for April. We will have the IDEA assurances next meeting and then the handbooks. Other than that, we're right where we should be for April.
Very good. Moving on to committee reports. Any committee reports?
I was able to attend the Wolf Creek Site Council from the Wendy's parking lot at Clay Center. And I left my notes at home, so they're on my desk. So I will try to remember them next time. So,
All right. Any other committee reports?
Yes, I attended the final Timber Sage Elementary School Site Council of the Year last week. I am just continually impressed with Mrs. Sly and Mrs. Bauer. Mika Bauer was there to attend as well and get to know the parents that are on their site council. It was a really good meeting. They had a lot of parent input, and I thought that was great. That is specifically around communication and what on the website and what would be helpful from a parent perspective. And so I think that both schools, Timber Sage and Darcy going over to Dayton Creek and Mrs. Bauer going to Timber Sage are going to be in great hands. I mean, I was really impressed with their meeting and how much they collaborated with the parents. So they're really genuinely, I think Darcy really sets the stage for genuinely listening to the parents. So I always love listening into her meetings. So, and then as Dr. Burke has said a couple of times, I will take over next month that seat on the library board. So doing anything I can right now to prepare for that. I am really looking forward to that and have had some feedback from some people in our community about the Spring Hill Library and just some things they would like to see as well. So not really a committee report, but just other things that we're doing. I think we announced at the February 8th board meeting that in partnership with the chamber, Sharon's done such a great job, and the city with Mayor Ellis. And then so far 15 local businesses have partnered with us to offer in person to foster meaningful and communication in honor of Travis Ellis. We're doing through Advent Health as well. And I'm doing the QPR training live in person on April 24th. And then the school district is also doing one, and also Johnson County is a part of that, Johnson County Mental Health, but the school district's also doing one on the 29th that's over Zoom. So I'm really, the more the merrier, the more people that can be trained in this. QPR is like what CPR is for heart health. QPR is for mental health. And so I would encourage as many people as possible to take the course. It's for everyday community members to make a difference in our community. So.
This isn't really a committee report, but I did go to the second half of the pandemic project, the school play, high school play. And I'm just very thankful that we had an instructor that really tried to get the kids on the stage this year, because Some people, that's for their thing.
Yeah.
And this was really, I don't know whether the students wrote some of these but they were all things around the pandemic, all topics. They were kind of like a whole bunch of little one acts, and some of them were really good. I mean, to really make you think about the processes of thinking and feeling and all that stuff through the last year. So it was good. I really enjoyed it.
I agree. It was different, but I think it was in some ways refreshingly different just to have students do their own thing and not just be a whole bunch of people on stage that they could individually. Some of them were individuals doing their own thing. So. I have a couple of items. First, I'll start with KASB. We had a meeting in March. The biggest thing, well, there's a couple of things. The board of directors established an equity subcommittee to come up with possible statement of equity that, trying to look at what equity means and also how can it be applied to education and diverse population within Kansas. So that committee's ongoing. You may see some new branding coming out of KASB in the next 6 to 12 months. So we went through a process of strategic planning that actually might change how we do our branding and communication with school boards. We're also considering establishing a C Corp to do all of our non-board of education type of stuff, like advocacy and things like that, just because the KSB does make money on like work comp, getting people to buy. I think we're doing board book now instead of board docs. And then we have the actual property casualty insurance business. So there's some other things that for school boards that we do that actually makes too much money for a nonprofit to have. So kind of spinning off a C Corp to help with that. Also talked about some of the things going on with gas, the same natural gas issues that we've had to deal with. Theirs is a lot bigger than ours, and thankfully we go through Greenbush on that. And then we'll have another board meeting coming up in June. The task force, I'm on the ESSER 2 and EANS task force. The EANS is for private schools to get money from the federal government. ESSER 2 is for the public schools to get money from the federal government. We spent all of our time pretty much on private school because there's a deadline that we have to have approval so that the private schools can get their money. And so in order to meet that deadline, we have had to just spend all of our time on that. The public schools, that's like years on. Private is within a couple months. So that's why. We've been working diligently on that, and the KSDE has been great working with them. So if you guys want to have something to take a nap to, we will be doing another meeting this Friday, but it will probably be 4 to 5 hours to go over all of the 72 applications from private schools so that we can get that to the State Board of Education for approval. I think that's probably it.
I did unfortunately receive a resignation from Stephanie Herthel, who's been our representative, Board of Education representative for the Spring Hill Recreation Commission, or Recreation Association. And so we do need to replace that. I think it's important that we have someone in that role for communication, but I just want to bring it up so that everyone's aware. She did an amazing job for several years, and I think she put a lot of good energy into it and worked hard at that. And I certainly appreciate everything that she contributed and all the effort and work that she put into that. So we will have to replace that, fill that role with someone.
And I just want to say that whoever we choose, it doesn't have to be somebody inside the city limits of Spring Hill.
Right.
This is, since it's a board, right, since it's a board position, it is for the entire school district. So it goes to Overland Park, Olathe as our representative in Spring Hill. An unincorporated Johnson County to be our representative on the board. So if anybody in the district wide wants to apply, I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, I
So
think
I'm-
they'd
oh,
actually
sorry.
prefer to
Yes.
have somebody in that's not in the city limits, because the city does have their 2 members that they
Right.
put on there. And then our other member lives in Woodland Ridge, so he's in the city limits as well. So if it'd be somebody up in even the Olathe city limits, I think they're right, would really
So-
like that perspective on their board.
I have been attending their meetings as the board member assigned to that, and they did request if we could try to find someone from the north end. There seems to be, and anyone in the public listening to this too, they really would like people to know that people in the whole entire district it's being funded by our school district boundaries, not by the city of Spring Hill. And so there's a lot of confusion about that. And so whatever we can do to help promote their activities that are happening, even for the people that live in the north. And so they're really hoping that maybe we could find somebody that direction that would help with that kind of communication and promotion. So they do a good job.
Yeah, Stephanie did a really good job. So we do need to, that is something, I guess first thing we need to do is decide when we want to assign somebody else. If we do that as part of our organizational meeting, or if we do something between now and then.
Don't believe that's usually assigned to the organizational meeting.
Mhm.
Our representative is.
Yeah, only our representative.
Just our board representative.
Right.
But this person's position is not on our organizational meeting because it's usually annually.
Right.
And
So
then
we need to receive applications.
right, we need to receive applications, and I'll have to go back and look up that process.
Is
'cause
it
It's been a long time.
is it a 2-year?
No.
It's usually an annual commitment.
I think it's annual, but she did it for several years, I know. So.
It's
So
probably,
Ken-
it's annual, but basically you have it until you don't want to have it.
So if you could look up that process, Candy, and then bring it back at our next
Yeah,
meeting. 'cause
exactly.
I want to make sure we maintain that communication. So. Very good. Any other committee reports? Superintendent report, Dr. Perk.
Yeah, first of all, Mrs. Seeling's going to take over for the Johnson County Library Board. So one of the things that I pushed hard for is try to expand the hours. I'm not sure why we're closed on Fridays and closed on Sundays. So I've been pushing hard to expand hours. I can tell you that there's a very strong focus up north, especially in the Overland Park, what is that, Lenexa area. And so we really have to be vocal to try to remind them about how important a library is. One of the last things that I said on the way out is you can have a library that serves 100,000 people and have 10,000 people going in there, which is a lot of people, but that's only 10%. You can have a small library here that represents 25,000 people, but maybe we have 5,000 people using it. That's a much higher percentage. And so don't forget the little small districts that, not small districts, the small communities that really depend upon there. So I look forward to turning that over to you. You'll do great things. They are a very hardworking, dedicated group, but they're also very set in their ways. So we just kind of need to keep reminding them that libraries are very important. Wednesday is the values meeting. If you remember, the first round of values meeting with Brian Jordan was Wednesday, the 7th. And so we will have one this Wednesday. If you want me to contact your person, please send me your email. Katie's going to be out so I can remind them. It'll be 6 o'clock. It'll actually be in this room right here. So 6 o'clock on Wednesday in this room.
Did we send them a formal invite already?
We did not send them because we thought you guys were asking them to be there.
Well,
So
I asked, but I was kind of
Yeah.
told them that they were gonna get an official email from the board.
I did the
I
same.
kinda
did you
thought that
guys
was-
share,
District.
did you guys share an email with Katie?
So I
Yeah,
only
yes,
submitted the
yes.
names and I guess
Oh.
I,
Gave an email.
that might be my fault. I was.
If you'll
under the
send us
assumption-
if you will send me an email for these people, I will send them a formal invite tomorrow. So
Perfect.
And it's so I'm a little bit confused too. Is there also one, Sharon, from the chamber that's at like 4:15 or something?
yes.
So those are two separate, right?
there's actually a third one.
Yeah, 'cause there's-
Well, we had 6 different groups. So the first group was principals.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, students first. I'm completely wrong. First group was, we had a group of students that met with Brian. Then we had a group of administrators that met with him. And I'm sorry, let's start this all over again.
Okay.
We had a group of students that met with Brian. That was on Wednesday. And then that was followed up by a group of teachers that met with Brian. Then that was followed up by a group of parents that was representative of the schools. So that was on the 7th. So on this Wednesday, on the 14th, you will have a group of administrators that meet with Brian. That'll be at 3 o'clock. Then at 4:30, you'll have the chamber members that Sharon has shared with Brian. And that will be at 4:30. And then at 6 o'clock, whoever you ask to be at that, whether it's a parent or a community member, they will be at 6 o'clock in this room. So Brian basically has a group, rotates them out, brings in another group, rotates them out.
So there's kind of two sets of parents. There was already a parent group, and then there's potentially parents from who we recommended, but they could be community members.
Right.
And so do you know, I did have one of my people ask the length because I believe that there is an event at the high school that night at 7 o'clock.
About an hour.
Okay.
Because the first group is at 3 and it usually finished about 4 and he wanted to kind of give them a chance to leave. There'll be people that sit around and kind of talk afterwards. Plus you have people come in early. Then a group of 4:30, they'll leave, and then the group at 6. So he's really good about, it takes about 45 minutes, but a lot depends on how much people talk. If they talk, it could be closer to an hour, hour and 15 minutes. So, and then once he has all of that organized, he will put together a survey that'll go to the whole community. He'll bring that to you and share that with you probably first part of August, and then we'll send that out and then he'll follow the rest of the steps that's in that program. So, but yeah, if you'll send me whoever you have in their email, I will certainly send them a formal request to remind them. And then last but not least, a couple of things. Just remind the public, we are not planning on having ORL next year, optional remote learning. We did it 1 year and that was kind of a requirement, but we do better in-person learning. That's what we're trained to do. And if people really want to continue with that, I would recommend Kansas Virtual Academy or Insight. So we did send something out district-wide telling people that that was not our plan. Second thing is we are hoping that this summer, there'll be no masks, no social distancing. We'll give people the whole summer to kind of get used to that. And so when school starts, we hope that we'll have large amounts of vaccinations. We'll have large amounts of people who are healthy, and we'll be able to start school next year, whatever normal is, but as normal as possible. And so we're not planning on, at this moment, having any mitigations. Now, that could change. The governor or the county or the state could change all that. But, you know, I've had people asking, well, what's next year going to look like? All I can tell you is what I hope it'll look like. I hope it'll look like as normal as possible. We'll be able to have meetings, not wear masks. We'll be able to not have to worry about temperatures, checks. We'll not have to go out one-way hallways. That's our plan. So unless that changes, that's kind of our plan. So I do know that the county is looking at starting to do vaccinations for people who want it down to the age of 12. And so if you're a person that wants to get vaccinated, there should be lots of openings coming up pretty soon. So never want to be dismissive of a pandemic, but it looks like things are changing to the point that we'd be able to start next year whatever normal is, as normal as possible. So wanted to basically say that because it's not our plan to have masks in one ways and all that. Again, things can change because last year I was hoping that we'd be fully in school too, and that changed on us as well. But that's our plan. So hoping good thoughts and moving forward. So that's into my report.
Can I ask you a question on that? So we voted and went forward with the reopening plan and that included all of mitigation. That's set to end at the end of the school year anyway.
Right. When this school year is over, that's done.
Yeah. So that kind of answers some of that question right now anyway.
Yep.
We do need, did you have
I
something?
was just
Sharon?
gonna say, I had, for something else, had just got the bylaws for the rec commission emailed to me last week. So I just looked up real quick. They're 4-year terms for their board members. So when we appoint somebody, they're there for 4 years. So I don't know how much time Stephanie had left on her term, but anyway.
She might have a year.
Yeah, I imagine that'll be part of the application process to see how much time's left.
Yeah, so we do have an executive, Candy will bring the process back to us, but we do need a couple of executive sessions this evening.
Mr. President, I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of a non-elected personnel to protect the privacy individual interests of an identifiable individual under coma. Those to be in session include the Board of Education members, superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of schools,
Yeah, great.
the director of HR and our district attorney, and others as requested. The executive session to begin at 9:35 with an open meeting resuming at no later than 10:50 at this place, or excuse me, 9:50 at this place. It doesn't matter. Does it really matter?
Yeah. Scared me there for a minute. I'm like, it shouldn't take.
Second.
Moved and seconded to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel under coma. Candy, please collect the vote.
I second.
Sharon?
All right, we'll start the voting with Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle.
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing.
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Approved.
To executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual or individuals under coma. Those to be in session include the Board of Education members, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Director of HR, and others as requested. The executive session to begin at 9:51 and resume in this place no later than 10 p.m.
I need to ask a question.
Mhm.
Is this an extension of the first executive
No.
session? You're going to the second one.
Separate.
Thank you.
Second the motion. It's moved and seconded to move to executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters of non-elected personnel under coma. Candy, please collect the vote.
Do I have a second?
Yeah.
It was Brent.
Thank you. And then we're just going to vote for the group in here.
Yes.
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Boyle?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt?
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes. Okay, we're back in session. We do have an action item for approval of employment of certified personnel.
Mr. President, I move the board approve continuing contract for certified personnel upon the superintendent's recommendation.
You said continuing contract?
Yes.
Second?
It's moved and seconded for the approval of employment of certified personnel on a continuing basis. Final questions, discussion on this. Candy, please collect the vote.
We'll start with Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Boyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealy,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt.
Yes.
Approved.
Move to adjourn.
Second.